In the chaos of battle, when bullets tore through the air, one woman stepped forward. Her name would echo in history, the angel of the battlefield. When the war's guns fell silent, Clara's mission did not end. She began a new fight, searching for the missing and turning grief into hope. The winter morning of December 25th, 1821, in the small farming town of North Oxford, Massachusetts, was cold and quiet. Snow covered the rooftops, and inside a modest wooden house, a baby girl cried for the first time. Her name was Clarissa Harlow Barton. But the world would one day know her simply as Clara. She would grow into one of the most beloved and courageous women in American history. Clara was the youngest of 5 children. Her father, Captain Stephen Barton, had once served as a soldier in the American Revolutionary War. He was a man of discipline and pride, often telling young Clara stories about courage, honor, and serving one's country. Her mother, Sarah Barton, was strong-willed and practical, teaching her children to work hard and take responsibility. Clara was a shy, quiet child. Crowds frightened her, and she preferred the company of animals or a good book over noisy gatherings. But behind her gentle nature was a fierce heart. That heart revealed itself when she was just 11 years old. Her older brother David suffered a terrible accident. He fell from the roof of the family barn and injured his head badly. In those days, medical care was slow, and the doctor could only visit occasionally. Clara stepped in. For nearly 2 years, she cleaned David's wounds, gave him medicine, and never left his side, even during the long nights when fever made him restless. She was only a child, yet she was learning skills and patience that would later save countless lives. By her teenage years, Clara discovered another passion: teaching. At 15, she began her career as a school teacher. She believed in discipline, but also kindness, treating each student as if they mattered. When she moved to Bordentown, New Jersey, she opened the first free public school in the town. Starting with only a handful of students, the school grew to over 600 children. Clara was proud until the town officials replaced her with a male principal, simply because they believed a man deserved the position. The injustice cut deep, and it was one of her first real battles against gender inequality. Disappointed, Clara left teaching and moved to Washington, D.C., where she took a job at the U.S. Patent Office. It was rare for women to hold such government positions in the 1850s, and her male colleagues often treated her with hostility. But Clara didn't quit. She proved herself so capable that she became one of the first women to earn the same salary as men in federal employment. Then, in April 1861, the world around her changed forever. The American Civil War had begun. The country was splitting apart. North versus South. Neighbor against neighbor. When the first soldiers returned from battle to Washington, Clara saw them arriving in filthy clothes, with open wounds, hungry, and sometimes dying on the floor of train stations. Many had no one to care for them. Clara's heart refused to stay still. She began collecting supplies, bandages, blankets, food, medicine, anything she could find. Friends, shopkeepers, and strangers donated to her cause. Soon she had more than she could store, so she delivered them herself to temporary hospitals. But this was not enough. Clara wanted to go where the need was greatest, the front lines. Officials told her it was too dangerous for a woman, but she persisted, writing letters, visiting military offices, and pleading for permission. Months later, her request was granted. In August 1862, she rode into her first battle at Cedar Mountain, Virginia. The scene was beyond imagination. Rows of wounded soldiers lying in mud, the smell of blood heavy in the air, and the sound of groans mixing with distant gunfire. Without hesitation, Clara began dressing wounds, feeding the hungry, and offering comfort to the dying. She worked through the night, lantern in hand, moving from one man to another. From Cedar Mountain, she went on to serve in Antietam, Fredericksburg, and other brutal battles. She faced scorching summer heat, freezing winters, and the constant danger of bullets and shells. Once, while bandaging a soldier, a bullet tore through her sleeve and killed the man she was helping. Clara did not stop. She simply moved on to the next wounded soldier. The soldiers began calling her the angel of the battlefield. To them, she wasn't just a nurse. She was a source of hope when death seemed certain. Clara herself once said, "I may be compelled to face danger, but never fear it. And while our soldiers can stand and fight, I can stand and feed and nurse them." By 1865, as the war dragged toward its bloody end, Clara had not only saved countless lives, but also earned the respect of generals, soldiers, and the public. But she was not finished. Her next mission would be even more challenging, and it would take her into a different kind of battlefield, the search for the missing. If this story touched your heart, please like, subscribe, share, and let us know your feelings in the comments. Your voice matters. The guns of the American Civil War finally fell silent in the spring of 1865. Cities lay in ruins, families were torn apart, and more than 600,000 soldiers were dead. But for Clara Barton, the war was not over. The fighting had stopped, yet thousands of families still waited for news of fathers, brothers, and sons who had never returned home. Were they alive? Had they died in battle? Or were they buried in unmarked graves, forgotten by history? President Abraham Lincoln himself heard about Clara's devotion during the war. In the final months of his life, he approved her request to lead an office of missing soldiers. From a small office in Washington, Clara and her volunteers worked tirelessly, answering over 63,000 letters from desperate families. She created lists of missing men, sent agents to search battlefields and prison camps, and personally wrote thousands of replies. One of her most difficult missions was visiting Andersonville Prison in Georgia, one of the deadliest Confederate prison camps. There, more than 13,000 Union soldiers had died from starvation, disease, and neglect. Clara walked among the wooden posts marking graves, carefully recording each name so their families would finally know where they rested. She understood that giving people the truth, even painful truth, was an act of mercy. By 1869, the weight of years on the battlefield and in hospitals had taken a toll on her health. At her doctor's urging, she traveled to Europe for rest. But rest did not last long. She saw what such an organization could mean for America, a nation still healing from its own war. The Franco-Prussian War broke out. Clara immediately volunteered with the International Red Cross, delivering supplies to hospitals and caring for the wounded on the battlefields of France. Even in a foreign land, she was still the same tireless angel she had been during the Civil War. When she returned to the United States in 1873, Clara began her greatest campaign yet, convincing the US government to join the International Red Cross. At first, she faced resistance, many believed America didn't need such an organization in peacetime. Clara argued passionately that the Red Cross could also respond to natural disasters, fires, floods, earthquakes, and help civilians as well as soldiers. For nearly a decade, she wrote letters, met with politicians, and gave public speeches, refusing to give up. Finally, in 1881, at the age of 59, Clara Barton founded the American Red Cross. She served as its first president and personally led relief efforts during disasters across the country. When a massive fire destroyed much of Michigan, Clara and her team brought food, clothing, and medical care. When the Johnstown flood of 1889 swept away thousands of lives in Pennsylvania, she arrived with doctors, nurses, and shelter for survivors. Her organization responded to hurricanes, floods, and even aided during the Spanish-American War. Clara was not just an organizer, she was always in the field, often working until exhaustion. She believed leadership meant sharing the hardships of those you served. Her presence gave comfort, and her stubborn will inspired everyone around her. By 1904, after more than 2 decades leading the Red Cross, Clara finally stepped down at the age of 82. She returned to her home in Glen Echo, Maryland, where she wrote her memoirs and continued to speak about the importance of compassion in public life. Even in her final years, she remained a symbol of courage and selflessness. On April 12, 1912, at the age of 90, Clara Barton passed away peacefully in her home. She left behind no children, no fortune, only a legacy that changed the meaning of mercy in America. Her life proved that one person, armed not with weapons but with compassion, could face the chaos of war and the cruelty of disaster and still bring hope. She had once said, "I may be compelled to face danger, but never fear it." And she lived every word. Today, every time the American Red Cross rushes to help disaster victims, every time a volunteer comforts a stranger in need, Clara Barton's spirit is there. She is still the angel, watching, guiding, reminding us that humanity's greatest strength is its ability to care for one another. Thank you for watching.